So the good news is most of our finger patterns here in intensity are major or 2-3 patterns. But the bad news is there are a few instances of minor patterns on the A string. And this is going to show up, for instance, like here in 37, the basses have C naturals on the A string here. And then when we jump the octave, the cellos are going to have a C natural. That's missed quite a bit. Here in 41, we have the same thing. And if we're not careful, we're going to miss those because outside of those two measures, we don't have any other C naturals. So if you have a piece of music that has a lot of C naturals and everybody's missing them all the time, they're going to be more obvious. But here, we miss them and it goes by and a lot of people don't notice. In this piece in general, scale degree 6 is conserved. We don't have a lot of C naturals, but we do have it a couple of times in first violins also. We have it here in measure 26. We have it here in 32, 33 again, 41. We have some slurs here in 51, 63 slurred notes again, and then 70, 71. So we've got some cases of C naturals. Can your students remember to play low 2? Do they understand that finger pattern? The next common problem that I see with intensity is that the orchestra's bows are sliding all over creation. They're not able to keep a straight bow. So it's really important to emphasize that technique. It's just a completely different piece. It's not intensity if they can't get the bowings right. The students need to be very deliberate with what they're doing with their bow to make this piece really pop. Another common problem that I see with intensity are dynamics. Here at 19, I would say the majority of the time that I hear this piece, I don't hear any dynamic changes at all. And this is a subito piano. All of our piano markings are subito piano. We have it at 54, and we have it at 70. And I just don't hear it. I'm not hearing the drop in dynamics, and it's because a lot of the times the students haven't mastered the technique, and so they can't really play soft because they don't have the skill to play this music with the intensity and play soft. They got to make a choice, and when you're making a musical decision, you're always going to prioritize the impact over the technique. I don't hear this a lot because most of the rhythms are fairly repetition, but sometimes I hear counting errors, students playing in the rests. Sometimes a student gets nervous and plays in the rest at a competition. It's going to happen. But particularly where the rhythms change, I'm talking about 35. Sometimes students can get tripped up with the rhythm, and then here at the end, measure 72 and 73, sometimes students are getting tripped up because the high strings are resting on 2 and the low strings 3, so it's very similar to what we have in 35. The next common problem that I hear in intensity is a lot of rushing. And rushing usually comes from students having improper technique. They're trying to play a marcato style, but they don't understand how to re-grip. And so when they're supposed to be gripping, they're just going on to the next note, and it just gets faster and faster and faster. And then all of a sudden, by the end, we're just hanging on for dear life, and the low strings are having a lot of trouble playing the 8 notes leading into the ultimate measure. For this, I really encourage the wiggle the string exercise. If you go to season 1, episode 1 of Teaching Orchestra, I've got a demonstration video on how to wiggle the string. And it's also, there is a wiggle the string part in the Teaching Companion. So if you want to get the Teaching Companion, you can help teach your students that technique in here as well. There's not a lot of stuff on the E string. And again, that's good and bad. That's the good news. The bad news is if it's not done right, it can sound just really obvious and really harsh because we don't hear it very often. Like everything's sounding pretty good, and then all of a sudden we get to this F sharp here in measure 30, and it's just rough, harsh. It's difficult to make the E string sound good. And I did an entire episode on the E string in season 1, so if you need some tips, definitely check that out. The last thing I want to talk about here in intensity are the slurs. There are some 8th note slurs here, and a lot of times the students don't use enough finger pressure to make sure that the strings sound good. They also have trouble using enough bow. Make sure they're using the same amount of bow in the slurs as they do for the half notes. But students need a lot of finger pressure for these slurs. In the teaching companion, I do an exercise with them where they tap the string. They should be able to tap the string and hear the notes as they're playing. If they can do that, then they're likely using enough finger pressure. And if they can't, maybe make some adjustments to their left-hand technique, maybe fix the setup or something like that, and that might help them better. That way, when they add the bow, it's going to sound much better. The slurs are going to have that left-hand articulation. It's going to sound a lot better. Have you taught intensity before? If so, what was your biggest problem and how did you solve it? Drop that down in the comment section below. I hope you liked my take on intensity. I hope you picked up some strategies, and check out my teaching companion if you're interested. It's on teachingorchestra.com, and we'll see you in the next video.